All right, guys, today I'm going to show you a setup that you can do on Skool to run 3-day challenges to a medium to kind of a high ticket offer. We actually did this in the real estate niche for like kind of real estate education, like basically teaching people how to wholesale and stuff. And we were able to pretty consistently get people to register, consume, and then ascend and actually buy into another thing. And so we didn't do it like inside of Skool particularly, but you could just like swap out some of the pieces, from a funnel and just like swap it out for Skool, and it would work effectively the same way. So the way that something like this would kind of work is that you would have your advertising elements first. And so you want to be able to drive traffic to a dedicated Skool group that is just like held for this challenge. And so there's like a handful of ways you can do that. You can post content, you can do outreach, warm outreach, cold outreach, or you can run ads on Meta, Google, like whatever it is. When we did it, we did a mixture of organic content on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. And then we also did meta ads to drive people in. So what you would do is you would go and you would drive people to the about page. In a funnel, this would just be like a standard registration page, but it would just be a Skool about page in this case. And then what happens is the user joins. Now, ideally, if you've really nailed the VSL on the about page and then all of the stuff kind of underneath it, you can pretty consistently get to like 25 to 30% opt-in rates, assuming that you get all of the targeting right with the content, right? And so it's like if you're running a webinar for or a challenge for real estate people and then your audience is all contractors, like probably not going to be a super high conversion. So you get 30% here, and then the user joins. And then what you do is on a funnel, we would just do this with like an extra page in between the landing page and the thank you page for registration. But what you can do is in the onboarding video in the Skool group, you can actually have a $17 upgrade to VIP. And inside of that, you give just a handful of things. So you give a like you can give like a dedicated link for people to watch if they're VIP, so they have like a separate room to themselves. You can have a workbook where they can kind of follow along through the 3 days, like that's pretty common. And then the other thing you're going to do is you're going to have these VIP Q&As, and I'll explain a little bit more about how these work in a minute. So what I would do is I would go through and do your advertising on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you have 4 days to advertise, and then your 3-day challenge runs for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so the way that we would run this is we would have the $17 upsell, and that gives you access to a handful of other stuff. And the whole point of having this VIP upsell is so that you can break even on your advertising. And so what a lot of folks do is they actually don't have any of this VIP stuff, and they just pay for traffic and drive them into a free challenge. And then they spend the entire week in the red. And then the way that they actually make up their ad spend is off of the core offer. But by having VIP, this is what we call a self-liquidating offer. And so by having this here, you can actually be ROI positive on all of your advertising before the challenge even starts. So big recommend here. So then what you do is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you do your actual like content. And day one, you're just going to do pretty much all value, right? It is like you want to jam as much value into day one as you possibly can. Then what you do is at the end of that day, well, you do this at the end of all of the days, but at the end of each day, what you do is you basically say, hey, we're going to be wrapping up. This is your homework for whatever. For those of you guys who bought VIP, in the calendar section, there is a link to the VIP Q&A. So for those of you guys who are VIP, you guys can go and join that right after this. If you're not VIP, you can go to the classroom and go buy VIP and then, get access to the VIP sessions. And so this does two things. One is at the end of each day, it gives you kind of a soft toss to that $17 because these guys who buy the VIP are way more likely to go and upsell at the end to the core offer because they've shown like major interest. They've got skin in the game, so they're paying more attention to each of the sessions. And it's also a good indicator that these guys have buying power to go and buy your $9.97 thing. So you just do that soft toss at the end of each of them, and then just tell them to go to the classroom where they buy it. And then you also say that same thing here in the onboarding video. Now, you actually do the $9.97 pitch on day 2, right? So what we always do is we would do like the big pitch on day 2, but you don't end with it on day 2. So like what a lot of people do is they'll get to like the end of day 2, and then at the very end, like they'll kind of bookend it at the end with the offer. That's a really big mistake because what'll happen is they won't show up to day 3 if you do that. So what happens is like you do the pitch on day 2, everybody's like, okay, like, you know, the cat's out of the bag, and then they don't come back for day 3. What you do is you pitch it, you give value in the first, like in the morning, right? If you're doing like a full day thing, you can kind of like scale this up and down depending on how long your challenge days are. It's all value in the morning, and then you do the pitch in kind of like mid to late day, and then you do like more kind of like, you know, laser coaching, like Q&A and stuff at the end, right? So it's the idea, it's like value, pitch, and then you bookend with value, because recency bias says that if you pitch right at the very end and then they leave for the day, the last thing they're going to remember is that you're trying to sell them something. They won't show up for day 3. But if you give them like really high end value after the pitch, the likelihood that they show back up for day 3 is pretty strong. And then again, at the end, you can go and you can pitch to VIP, and then you can go and actually pitch the $9.97 offer again to these VIP people. And then you do kind of a very similar day on day 3, where it's like all value, a repitch, congratulations to people at the end, and then, you know, same thing, pushing to VIP or pushing to there. Now, one of the big things that actually does help a ton is you want to reward the people who did buy the VIP. And so they have access to the same offer, but there is an extra bonus that you're going to give to the people who paid for VIP. Because what you want to do is you want to reinforce their decision for buying the VIP thing. So you want to have something really valuable as a bonus that these people don't get. And you can talk about that in the pitch that you do on day 2 or the repitch on day 3. But the big piece, it's like you want to reward the people for doing VIP, because if afterwards, let's say you have this $9.97 offer and then you have upsells and downsells and cross sells after that, then it'll just be a big reinforcer to these people who bought the VIP piece. And then for the people that buy your $9.97 offer, I would send these guys to a totally different community. Right. So like you have a separate Skool group that's just for these guys. And really that's just for your sake of being able to keep track of, like, you know, who's where, who's what. Because what can happen otherwise, if you're mixing these things together, it can be really confusing trying to manage like a group. Like, let's say you have a group of 1,000 people in it, and like most of them are here participating in the challenge, or they're here from old challenges, and then other people you're trying to like service for the $9.97 offer. Like it can be really kind of hectic. And it kind of goes from there. Also, I should probably preface with this, is that this is a annual offer, right? And so if your Skool group that you're selling to is normally $99 a month, the offer here is you're basically selling annual. And so what selling it annual does is it basically means that you don't end up in a position where you take money from somebody one time and then you're on the hook to service them forever. And it kind of just goes to it from there. So this is the structure that I would do if I were going to do a challenge on Skool. Like I said, we've done challenges before, but we were doing them through like Kajabi and with sales funnels and like all this like riffraff of different stuff. But I was on a call with some guys in another Skool group that I'm in, and we were talking a little bit about this, and I drew it out of it, but I wanted to flesh out the concept a little bit more for anybody who's you know, into that sort of thing. And if you are interested in more of this kind of stuff, then I also have a Skool community. It's totally free. You guys can go check it out in the description.